Welcome to New Jersey Now. I'm Jim McQueenie. The scourge of heroin, the epidemic of heroin, something the state is trying to come to grips with. It's become a very serious topic and a very personal one here. We have Patty DiRenzo, who is a parent and advocate as well on this issue, and Angelo Valente, Executive Director of the Partnership for a Drug-Free New Jersey. Patty, if I could start with you, because it starts with something very personal for you, this issue that's become a policy issue, a drug enforcement issue, but for you, it was a family issue.
Yes, it was. My son, Sal, died at the age of 26 from a heroin overdose. He was found in Camden in a car, and we were told that there was someone who was with him when he overdosed, but they didn't call 911. So for that reason, I had advocated for the Overdose Prevention Act, which grants somebody immunity if they call 911 to report an overdose. Sal struggled in his high school years, but basically had the same type of upbringing as any other, suburban child. Played sports, was involved heavily with the family. We were a good family, nothing out of the norm. I think that in high school he may have started experimenting with marijuana, got a little comfortable with that, changed over to pills, and I think when the pills became too expensive, he turned to heroin. What
did you find out that afterwards that you didn't know before about this?
I was not educated enough. I brushed it off to him just being a teenager, the different mood swings, or if we found marijuana, you talk to him, you send him to counseling, you think that, okay, he's okay now. He went to counseling, but it takes more than that, a lot more.
Angelo, the overall issue, Patty has the tragedy of her own son here for something to deal with, but when you look at what's happening around the state here, the amount of heroin, the affordability of it, it's cheap. It's of a high grade, and law enforcement people say it's the highest grade ever. Even when you talk about it, you're a little reluctant to talk about it because you don't want to encourage anybody on this thing, but it is here, and it is an epidemic.
There's no question about that, Jim. We have found that in New Jersey, unfortunately, each day, 2 families go through what Patty unfortunately had to go through. 2 families each day lose a child to heroin abuse. So we really need to be able to be putting together all-out effort to reverse this trend. And that effort begins in education. As Patty mentioned, parents need to be aware that this is an issue that affects everyone. It's an issue that's in suburban communities and urban communities, rural communities, wealthy communities, and poor communities. And every parent has to be involved. One of the things
if I could say, with you mentioned about this has happened before everywhere, and now it's happening some places before, let's call it urban areas, and now it's in suburban areas. Is it sort of almost a dreadful fact or a lamentable fact that it's gotten the surge in publicity here when it entered suburbia?
Well, I think there's no question that we have found the number of deaths that have occurred in New Jersey have been staggering.
Has it moved to suburbia, though?
Without a doubt. In fact, some of the areas that we're finding that have the largest increase in heroin abuse and heroin deaths are places like Ocean and Monmouth County, Bergen County, all suburban counties.
And let me ask Patty. Patty, you just mentioned something before about he got comfortable, your son, with marijuana.
Right.
Now you see in New Jersey proposed laws to make marijuana free to use as an adult type of thing. And advocates say, no, that's not a gateway drug, and they ridicule that. And in fact, the governor has said, yes, it is a gateway drug on here. As a parent, and you saw he was getting comfortable in that process, do you hear that debate and you go,
I have trouble with that issue because I think with my son, it was definitely a gateway drug. And maybe every individual is different, but definitely would say I feel like it was a gateway drug. I think he found a comfort level with it and felt like, okay, I did that.
And do you think some parents might say, there's a comfort level with them in some way that says, oh, it's just grass, it's not drugs?
Yeah, I think a lot of them say that and feel that it's not in the same category, but it opens up a lot of doors.
And you're someone that can really say that to them. And when you go speaking to people as an advocate, and we just talked about, what's the first things you tell them when you advocate?
Not shrug anything off. You have any instinct, any feeling that something's wrong, then something is wrong, and you need to address it.
Do you sometimes, or would you have felt that, like most parents would, oh, I'm afraid to press this with my child because my child will think I don't trust them?
I think a lot of parents want to be their friends, and yes, they feel that way, but you can't, like I said, if you think something's wrong, you need to go full force. There's too much out there right now, and it's too easy to get.
Angelo, on that point, it's too easy to get here. There's a lot of debate because it's here in such abundance and so cheap and in quality in New Jersey. Is it that we have lost the drug war at the borders of the country, if not the state?
Well, I think that actually we are making progress. If you look across the board, you'll see that drug use is down in many areas. Unfortunately,
Total drug use?
Total drug use is down.
But then they moved to a more concentrated base of heroin, where the deaths are like phenomenally rising.
And the reason for that is that there was a misperception for many years that from a lot of young people that prescription drugs, the experimentation of prescription drugs, were safe. If it was prescribed for my grandmother or my mom,
Exactly.
how dangerous could it be? And unfortunately, many of the prescription drugs that were being experimented with were opiate-based. So it was providing these young people, some of them, with an addiction that led them and continues to lead them to heroin abuse. So I think if we start putting our efforts on educating young people about the dangers of experimentation with prescription drugs, we're going to see a decline in heroin abuse as we go forward. So I think that's really the main focus of our efforts at the partnership, is to educate families and young people about how dangerous the medicine cabinet is and how they need to protect their homes by protecting their medicine cabinets and keeping these medicines out of the reach of children.
You know, one of the things that, and I want to ask you before we go here, what can anybody do other in government, let's say, here? I do notice that Narcan, the equipment to sort of have kids recover from heroin briefly, so they can be treated on this thing, is starting to be put in places here. But are there other things that the state is doing or not doing?
Not doing.
Well, what's the top thing that they're not doing?
We need more beds, more treatment. You know, kids who have not committed a crime need to get treatment. You know, it can't be in New Jersey where you just commit a crime and you're able to go through drug court. We need to get treatment and expand beds for these kids.
Okay, and a lot of legislators say it costs money and they don't have the money in the state to do that. Okay, well, thank you very much.